Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen. I haven't posted a video in, I'd say, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a little longer. It's a really busy time of year around the holidays. My family actually doesn't do Christmas. We do Hanukkah. But my husband has work off and we spend a lot of time as a family. And we go see all of our friends and family as well, just like anyone else this time of year. So we've been really busy and I haven't filmed a video and I haven't posted one. So I have a new video for you, obviously, because here I am. I am going to make a really simple sauerkraut for you guys tonight. Now, sauerkraut's one of my favorite things to make because it is so easy. If you've never fermented anything before, start with sauerkraut because it's simple. It doesn't have a lot to it, and it's not complicated. You literally have 2 ingredients. The process is easy. You just have to wait, like most ferments. So I'm going to kind of go around the table here and show you how to get started on that. Okay, so I have just 1 head of cabbage here, and I bought this a couple weeks ago, and it's been sitting in my fridge, and we've been really busy, and I haven't eaten it. So there's a couple of pieces on the outside that are getting a little funky looking. You can peel those right off, obviously. You don't want to eat those. So that's what's nice about cabbage is it kind of lasts a while in the fridge, and sauerkraut's not going to be hurt by you throwing away the outer leaves because it's not bad on the inside. So I'm going to peel the outer leaves off, and then I'm going to slice this in half, and we're going to cut out the core so that you don't have those big tough pieces in there. I'm going to do that real quick. Okay. I make funny faces, by the way, when I cook. Sometimes my tongue hangs out. It's genetic. Look at you, Holly. You do that too. My sister and I, we tease each other because our tongues tend to hang out when we concentrate on things. I know, my husband teases me all the time. But I do make funny faces when I'm concentrating on something. So please bear with my funny faces. Okay, so that I've pulled off these outer layers, and there's still just a little bit more around here. You guys can kind of see those little brown spots there. I'm going to just chop those off so I don't have to take too many layers off. Okay, the rest of this looks pretty good. As you're chopping, if you see any pieces on your own cabbage that has any funky colors or anything, just chop it off. Put it in the garbage. Okay, so I'm going to start by slicing this in half. Make sure you have a really nice, good, sharp knife because it makes it so much easier. Now, you've got your core piece here. You can kind of see that there. You're going to want to cut a pyramid shape around that and cut it out because it just doesn't make very good sauerkraut. You can see this little guy here. Just cut him out. I'm going to do that on both sides. I'm going to get a little further in there because I don't want those pieces in there. I like my sauerkraut kind of medium. I don't want it super chunky, but I don't want it really, really fine either. You can chop your sauerkraut as thin or as thick as you want it, and I'll show you how I do mine. So I'm going to finish taking the core out of this side. Okay. Okay, so with this cabbage, you can kind of see, when I hold it up closer, all the little layers of the cabbage. I'm going to turn this sideways so you can see how thick I sliced mine. I've got it just a little wedge like that. So you can see it's not completely thin like if you were shredding it on a cabbage shredder. It's a medium-sized slice. They're not super, super thick. If you want yours a little chunkier, that's fine. It'll still ferment just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice all this cabbage up. As I'm going along, I'm going to be layering it in this bowl here. And about every quarter piece of cabbage, I'm going to take a little bit of this salt. I have some pink Himalayan salt here. Again, I've said before in some of my videos, do not use iodized salt in your ferment. I've heard bad things. Changes the color, changes the flavor, and I don't know. I like to use the pure stuff. So I've got a pink Himalayan salt here that I'm going to use, and I'm going to sprinkle it as I go along so that the cabbage layers and the salt layers are kind of dispersed really well. And then I'll show you what to do after that. And this is actually a tablespoon and a half for this one head of cabbage. I'd say this cabbage is less than 2 pounds, so about a tablespoon and a half for a little less than 2 pound cabbage. If you have any pieces that come out looking bigger than you want them to, you can go ahead and slice those smaller. I have a couple of pieces. Some of the thicker ridged pieces, I'm going to just slice those smaller so that they will be the size I like them to be. I like to do the sauerkraut, and then I will separate it when it's all fermented into little quart mason jars and just kind of throw it in the fridge. We love to pull it out when we're doing like beef smokies, or I found some really good beef bratwursts that we really love to use, and they're delicious. And I'll cook up an onion and I'll caramelize it with a little bit of beer, and it has the best flavor, and it goes really good with the bratwurst and the sauerkraut. My dad actually showed me that trick. He makes really good beer onions. They're delicious. So one of these days I'll have to show you when the sauerkraut's finished how we make the beer onions for our brats with the sauerkraut. Okay, so that, like I said, is a bunch of kind of mediumly sliced pieces. I've got some long pieces in there like this, like these guys right here, but I've also chopped up. That would be my dryer. It's like the loudest dryer in the whole world. I swear it's like 40 years old too. I'm gonna pause this and go open the dryer so it doesn't yell at us the whole time. I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. So here's our sauerkraut, our cabbage all chopped up right here. And I'm gonna add another layer into that bowl and sprinkle some more salt on. And I'm just gonna keep going, slicing it and salting it until it's all finished. So I'm going to pause the camera and get that done, and I'll show you what the next step is after that. It's a really, really easy recipe. So be right back. Okay, so we're back. All the cabbage has been sliced, and it sliced up to be quite a bit more than it looked like. So it's a little big for this bowl. I'm going to put it in a slightly taller bowl so I have room to maneuver. Now what you're going to do, put that with all the salt that you've layered in there into your bowl there. Obviously, if it fit in the bowl you had, leave it. But mine just got a little small. Okay, so this is kind of a really interesting part I'm going to explain to you guys. You're going to go ahead and basically start massaging the salt into the cabbage. And what that does is the salt will start to draw moisture from the cabbage. So it's basically leaching the moisture out. And as you massage it and wait, you will actually be creating almost like a cabbage juice brine with the salt. That's going to basically ferment your cabbage. You don't have to make a brine for this. So you will have a good amount of fluid when this is all done. But it takes a few minutes, so you're going to massage it and mix it up. I'd say for about 10 minutes. It's kind of like you're massaging a bread dough. Turn it and squeeze it. and the cabbage will start to wilt. It won't be as hard, and it'll start getting really wet. The moisture will start to gather at the bottom of the bowl. Usually I will massage this for a few minutes, and then I'll let it sit and leach more fluid out. So we'll probably do that. I'm going to massage it for a few minutes, and then I will pause the camera while it sits and creates more fluid. And I'll show you what that looks like as well. So as you go, the cabbage almost starts to look bruised. That's what you want. The salt's going to start really affecting that cabbage. Now, I love fermenting things because I feel like you take something that, like cabbage, is already good, and you can do so many things with it, and you can make all new things with it. I think that's why I like doing my wines and my krauts. I love doing my corned beef because it's a really cool process to watch. The science behind it is so fascinating, and then you end up with this delicious thing when you're done. My kids actually love watching all the all the fermentation things I do as well because it's cool. It's got little bubbles in it, and we talk about the science behind a lot of my ferments with my kids in school. We homeschool, and they love it. It's really cool. I love to break down the science for them and how it works and why it works. And yeah, they don't get to learn how to make my wine yet. Give it I don't know, 2 more decades. My kids are little. But okay, so this cabbage is shrinking a lot. So it's about half the size it was before because we're bruising it and shrinking it as we squeeze it, and it's starting to get really wet and stick to my fingers. So I'm going to bring this bowl around after I clean this off, and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like right now and how much fluid is in it. And my hands are actually kind of red and pink because the cabbage is cold on my hands. Okay, so I'm going to come around and show you guys what this looks like. Okay, so right here, this cabbage starting to get kind of wilted, and if you look in the bottom, it's barely starting to collect a little bit of fluid down there. I guess you kind of can't see that in the camera very well, but I'm going to let this sit on the counter for about 10 minutes. I'm going to pack the cabbage down real well, and then I'm going to let it sit for 10 minutes and come back and check it. And as the fluid rises, you're going to do that some more, kind of massage it some more, massage the salt in, and just keep pressing it down. You're going to want enough fluid eventually to put this in your fermentation crock. Press it down with your weights, and the fluid has to be a little bit above the cabbage. You don't want any of the cabbage floating on the top. You don't want it exposed to air because it's anaerobic and it will grow mold. But if it stays under the fluid, it will ferment and be really delicious sauerkraut. So I'm going to put this down and let it sit for a few minutes, and I'll be back. Okay, it's been a few minutes. I'm going to show you what the cabbage looks like now. So as you can see, it's still very wilted, but at the bottom, you've got a good amount of fluid in there now. That's actually the brine you're going to use. You're going to pack this all into a fermentation container, and I'm going to show you what that looks like, and push it down tight under the brine, and then you'll put your weights on top. So let's go do that right now. Okay. So I've got this little canning jar here. This is just a little pint jar, and this is going to help me really pack the sauerkraut down tight and push the fluid up. So I'll show you how I do that. Now take the lid off my fermentation container. Everything's been sanitized. You should always wash your hands really well and sanitize things before you do a ferment because you can get some really funky flavors in it. And you might just ruin your ferment altogether. You might get mold in it. So I'm going to move my little half moon fermentation weights out. Now, if you haven't watched some of my other videos, this is a really cool setup. I got this for cheap. This is a cookie jar from Walmart. Okay. What I did was I went online and I found these little glass half moon crescent fermentation weights. It comes in a box of 2, and when they're placed in your little cookie jar there, on top of something, it will weigh down your ferments. So it was actually really cheap. Most fermentation crocks I looked at were really expensive and I didn't want to spend that much. And I love that it's glass. I can see what it's doing. I can see the bubbles. I can see if there's any weird colors or mold. Yeah, so I really love this setup. You can find all of these things online for super cheap, or you can buy these weights online and then just go into Walmart and make sure these fit well in your jar. That's what I did, basically, so that I could take these into the store and find a jar that it fit in really well. My baby's waking up, so I'm going to pause again and go take care of the baby, and I'll be right back to show you the next step. Okay, I'm back. Let's get this in the crock before the baby wakes up again. Okay, so I'm going to start by just putting all of that with the fluid. You want all of that fluid in your crock. Okay, so I've got all of that in the crock now. You move this out of the way so we can see this better. Okay, so I'm just going to level it out. And this is where my little handy dandy jar comes in. I'm going to use that to really push that cabbage down. You want it packed tight, because then it forces the fluid to come up. And as you push this down, a couple go around, so the fluid will start getting higher and higher above your cabbage. Okay, so now I've got it packed down pretty tight. And I've really pressed it down with that jar. I'm just making sure I don't have any little stragglers on the side of the jar. And kind of checking the level of my fluid just to see how high the fluid's going. Right now it's about the same height as the cabbage itself, but when I put the crock weight in and push it down, hopefully it'll push a little more fluid up and it'll be just about perfect. So we're going to get all these little pieces off the side of the jar. Okay. So I'm going to actually bring this closer so you guys can see what that looks like. You see that? You can see the little air bubbles in between the kraut. And if I push down on it, you can see the fluid as well. See that? That's what you want. You want excess fluid there. And if you have more fluid than that, that's great. I'm going to press this down so that we get a good amount of fluid with the weights. Now, depending on how much fluid your kraut makes, you might have a lot and you might have just enough to cover it with a little extra on top. So long as your kraut's all submerged, you're fine with just a little bit. But any kraut above the surface of that water or that fluid, you're going to have a problem. Absolutely. Now, my crock weights do have a hole in the middle. Did get them in and out of the container because they fit perfectly the diameter of my crock jar. So that hole can be a little problematic at times if you don't have everything packed down very well. You guys, any of you who saw my garlic video, I was having a hard time that day. It was not working. All the garlic kept floating up through the hole in the crock weight, so I had to put a little plastic lid there to cover the hole so they wouldn't float up above the brine and rot. So that will happen. If you get anything floating up, it will rot. It'll cause mold. I don't really mess around with mold in my ferments. I'm not a very brave person. If it starts molding, it goes in the trash. Do a little research, whatever you're comfortable with, that's up to you. I'm kind of a chicken about it, so I usually throw it away if it gets moldy. But let's get these crock weights in, these sauerkraut weights. Okay, that looks like it's actually going to be perfect as far as the amount of brine we're going to get. So I'm going to push those down really, really good so that we can get a good amount of fluid off this kraut. Okay, now I've got a couple little pieces that floated out just from me pushing on the weights, the pressure of the weights pushed it up through the middle. I'm going to pull those out. I don't want any floating cabbage pieces to cause a problem in my ferment. Just kind of clean that up a little bit. And I've noticed as the sauerkraut weights, the fermentation weights, I should say, I've noticed as the fermentation weights weigh on the sauerkraut, you will get a little more fluid in about 24 hours, a day or two. That's normal, that's good. Just watch for, as this goes along, as you ferment, watch and see if any pieces get out and float to the top. Get them out as quickly as they float to the top. Don't let them mold. Like I said, that's not good. You can just get a wooden spoon and pull them out and put the lid back on. Now this will stink a little bit. It's going to smell like sauerkraut for a couple of weeks. I want to say 4 to 6 weeks is about how long I usually do. And then I put it in individual little jars with a lid and I put it in the fridge and I use it. Yeah, so keep an eye on it. Don't let any pieces float to the top. If they do, just get them out. Now, I've heard some people say for a ferment you can use stainless steel, not aluminum. Again, I haven't tested that. And I haven't done too much research on it, so do what you're comfortable with. But I usually use a wooden spoon to kind of fish out the pieces from my ferment. And I'm going to bring this around so you can see what this looks like with the weights in it. Okay, so there are the weights. And you can see there's just a little film of brine on top there. That's what you want. If you have more, that's great. You definitely want that moisture, that barrier for your sauerkraut because it's anaerobic. It doesn't want oxygen in there. So I'm going to just kind of finish cleaning out any of these little pieces of cabbage so that I don't get any rot in the jar. Piece there. And that's it, folks. I'm going to put it on the back of my counter, just kind of behind my wheat grinder here where it's in the cool shade of the countertop. Now, it will not ferment very quickly if your house isn't warm, but you also don't want your house too hot. So most ferments like between 65 to 75 degrees. They don't like it hotter than that, from my experience anyways. My house stays about 68, 69, but the granite countertops are pretty cold. So I like to put a little rag underneath it because it kind of almost insulates it from the cold countertops. And it helps the ferment get going. So this will ferment slower in the winter where we're at right now than it will in the summer. So it'll go really fast in the summer and a little slower in the winter. So I'll just kind of keep an eye on it, and at about the 4-week mark, if it's been fermenting well, I'll take a taste, and if it tastes good, I'll throw it in jars in the fridge. if it's not as sour as I want it or not as fermented as I want it, I'll let it go another week or two. And honestly, when people made sauerkraut before refrigeration, they would make the sauerkraut and it would sit in these big old clay jars or sometimes wooden barrels for months at a time. And it's still edible just fine that way. But I am kind of a germ freak. I know, weird, because I use my hands for everything, but I make sure they're really well washed. I don't love the idea of fishing sauerkraut out of a jar like this if it's been in my pantry just like this for months and months and months and months. I'm going to let it ferment to the point where I think it tastes good, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge so it stops, or at least goes kind of dormant. But yeah, I'm going to put this on the countertop, and I will probably be back in a couple of weeks to give you guys an update. I feel like I need to do like a fermentation update video where I can show you guys the update on my wine and the update on my sauerkraut. I already finished my garlic, if you guys have watched that video. The fermented garlic's in the fridge, and I use it all the time. That's pretty simple. Fermented garlic doesn't look a whole lot different than just regular garlic. Sometimes it gets a little patch of color here and there, a little bit of green or a little bit of pink, I've noticed, but those aren't bad colors. That's just part of the garlic changing color through the fermentation process. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm going to put this on the counter, and I hope you guys like the video. I hope you try it. Let me know how it goes. And yeah, like and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you guys next week when I do another video. I have some really cool ideas for stuff to do, and I haven't decided on which one. I know I need to do some more corned beef, and I'd really love to show you guys how to make a fiocchetti pasta. Most people I know have never even heard of fiocchetti. It's this cute little pouch pasta, almost like a ravioli. It's filled with cheese or other yummy things, but it looks like a present. It's really cute and it tastes great, so I'd love to do that at some point. But yeah, it just depends on, usually my videos depend on what needs to be done that week, what do I have in the fridge that needs to be used up, and what had I already planned on filming for you guys. So I'm going to put this on the counter, and hopefully I'll see you guys next week for whatever I decide to make at that point. And God bless you guys, and good night.